dynamic maritime environment like Nigeria, securing the nation's inland waterways involves a multifaceted approach with focus on safety, infrastructure development. Several factors, both natural and human errors, have been identified by experts as the cause of boat mishaps, including illegal use of unregistered craft, overloading, night sailing, and failure to use life jackets. Well, amidst concerns over recent spike in boat accidents, the federal government has demonstrated commitment towards enhancing safety and security on the nation's inland waterways through a series of interventions aimed at addressing safety issues and preventing further mishaps. Key players in the maritime sector have also suggested the implementation of the Waterway Transportation Code 2023, which was designed to standardize operations and minimize accidents, enhancing infrastructure like river ports and communication systems, and promoting private sector participation in waterways management and, of course, its operations. Now, if all that is put in check, where are the consistent boat mishaps? How can stakeholders play their specific roles in keeping the waterways safe? Well, tonight, the spotlight is on safe passage, securing Nigeria's inland waterways, and our guest is Mr. Mani Ochugboju. He's a transportation consultant and a lawyer. We'll bring you situation reports from across the country. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. This is Weekend File. I'm Ruth Aguilera. Right now, we'll begin with the news. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Philip Perry, has condemned what he described as the vilification and denigration of the President of Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu, by a politically motivated group, tactically supported by the opposition party, for his recent visit to the Caribbean country. The Prime Minister, in his state's address on the country's 2025 Emancipation Day, came down hard on those vilifying the recent visit. President Tinubu's visit to St. Lucia, if you recall, is to establish formal relations with the island and other members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which was criticized by a section of Nigerians. The Prime Minister described the act as another demonstration of the harmful effects of the legacy of slavery, self-hate, and a readiness to accept African people and their descendants as inferior.
The vilification and denigration of the President of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, by a politically motivated group, tacitly supported by the opposition party, was another demonstration of the harmful effects of the legacy of slavery, self-hate, and a readiness to accept African people and their descendants as inferior. That behavior was nothing short of shameful and disgraceful. Had the visit been by a head of state from another country, the reception from that group would have been at the least respectful. To the government and people of the Republic of Nigeria, the government and people of St. Lucia have been honored by the visit of your presidents and look forward to establishing and deepening economic, social, and cultural ties with your country.
He also maintains his country's readiness and commitment towards implementing the Memorandum of Understanding between the two countries. Nigeria has affirmed commitment to strengthening diplomatic ties with the Democratic Republic of Congo, acknowledging the leadership of President Denis Sassou Nguesso in promoting regional peace and stability, especially across Africa's Great Lakes region. Vice President Kashim Shettima made the commitment while receiving the Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Anatole Colinet Makoso, at the presidential villa. State House correspondent Abdurrahman Jibrila reports.
Congolese Prime Minister visiting the State House, soliciting Nigeria's support to consider Congo's request in its bid to lead the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Vice President Kashim Shettima, who received the Congolese delegation on behalf of President Bola Tinubu, said the issues raised by the visiting Prime Minister, particularly the request for Nigeria's endorsement of Firmin Motoku for the post of UNESCO Director General, will be conveyed to the President.
So on behalf of President Bola Tinubu, I want to register our profound gratitude to President Denis Sassou Nguesso, and by extension yourself and the government and people of the Republic of Congo, for the leadership you have shown and for the stability you are helping to bring the Great Lakes region. Be rest assured that all the issues raised, especially over your candidature for the Director Generalship of UNESCO, will be conveyed to Mr. President, and I'm hopeful that he is going to endorse your candidate, fundamentally because what binds us together surpasses whatever that divides us.
Je pense que cette fois-ci, surtout pour nous, l'Afrique au sud du Sahara, il est temps que nous puissions.
The Congolese Prime Minister, who delivered a special message from the President of Congo, called for stronger relations between both countries. Matoko joined UNESCO in 1990 and served in general strategic roles, including Director of multiple regional offices, Director of the African Department, and as Assistant Director General for Priority Africa and External Relations. The Prime Minister also thanked the Nigerian government and people for their humanitarian support to Congolese children who benefited from the Rochas Foundation, noting that some of the children, many of whom were orphans, have graduated, while others still in school. He commended President Tinubu's leadership at ECOWAS, the African Union, and the United Nations, just as he condoled with Nigeria over the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari. From the State House, Abraham Jibrila, NTA News.
The Tinubu administration says it remains committed to equitable distribution of the nation's resources and critical infrastructure across the length and breadth of the country, in line with the Renewed Hope agenda. Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, stated this at the 2025 dialogue session of the Northern Caucus of the National Forum of Former Legislators, which held in Abuja. He cited ongoing infrastructure projects in northern Nigeria as proof of the administration's commitment to balanced national development.
This is evident in the deliberate and consistent way in which critical infrastructure projects have been conceived and implemented to connect every state and region, bringing people together, facilitating trade, and encouraging investment. This administration has commenced the 275-kilometer Sokoto-Gusau-Puntua Zaria Road, the 350-kilometer Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Road, the 156-kilometer Zaria-Hunkoyi Road, Jimeta Bridge in Adamawa, to mention for the few.
The forum in its communique canvassed support for the Tinubu administration while urging sustained efforts to tackle security challenges in northern Nigeria.
We align to the unifying foundation of our country. This relates to the rotation of power between the North and South. We advocate that the South be allowed to complete their tenure. The forum is of the belief that it will be in the best interest of the North for the incumbent to complete the tenure of the South.
Niger state stakeholders of the All Progressives Congress have commended the developmental strides recorded under the Tinubu administration and threw their weight behind the second-term bid of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Well, this was the outcome of a meeting convened by Governor Mohamed Umaru Bago, attended by national and state public office holders, including the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohamed Idris. Husseina Musa reports.
The consensus by the Niger State APC caucus was reached at a meeting organized to review the party's performance, settle unresolved inter-party disputes, preparatory to a successful outing at the upcoming local government council elections. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's endorsement was sequel to the renewed hope initiatives that include livestock development, Nigerian Education Loan Fund, and agricultural revolution, among others.
Every other stakeholder in the party, we've come unanimously to make sure and to reassure the center that Niger State, there is no second party. Niger State is 100% APC.
We are all for APC. We are for Asuwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We are for our governor here. We have all agreed that we will continue to support the presidency of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and we will, God willing, also march with him as he seeks his re-election to his second term.
Our state is witnessing progress, and anybody who does not love progress should please leave us alone. We are APC.
And we have seen what Mr. Governor has been doing, and we have all decided that we should endorse him for a second time.
Other speakers, while affirming their support, emphasized the need for the members to remain united in order to continue to harness the gains of democracy. Emina Hussein Musa, NTA News.
In another development, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, has appealed to all parties involved in the suspension of Badegi FM in Niger State to remain calm, assuring that the National Broadcasting Commission has the necessary mechanisms to resolve the issue in a fair and impartial manner. In a statement, the Special Assistant Media to the Minister says the Ministry of Information and National Orientation has taken note of concerns raised by various stakeholders in the media industry regarding the recent directive by the Niger State government to suspend the operations of Badegi FM. Niger State Governor Mohamed Umaru Bago, during an expanded Niger State APC caucus meeting in Mina that was on August 1st, reportedly cited allegations of unethical broadcasting and incitement against the government by the suspended Badegi FM station. The statement adds that the suspension of broadcasting licenses falls within the purview of the National Broadcasting Commission, as stipulated by law, and that the ministry welcomes the decision of the Niger State government to formally report the perceived unethical behavior of Badegi FM to the NBC for resolution. Flipping to other issues, Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umar Zulum has called on residents to desist from building on waterways and indiscriminate dumping of refuse and drainages. The governor, who assured citizens that there is no imminent threat of flooding from the Alau Dam, he also emphasized the need for precautionary measures to mitigate flood risk. Mohammed Goni will tell us more.
The visit to Alau Dam follows growing concerns over the possibility of flooding in Maiduguri and surrounding communities. Governor Zulum, who was conducted around the spillway gates and ongoing rehabilitation site, interacted with the engineers handling the projects. He stressed the importance of synergy between the state government and the project team, announcing the provision of a Hilux vehicle and 6 motorcycles for military personnel to boost security at the site.
I was told that the level of proper authorities, isn't it, within the last few days, and we believe the volume will continue to. As of now, based on the engineering knowledge that we're having, we concluded that that was the spot.
The governor also pledged additional allowances for security personnel deployed to the area.
I want to warn the people of the state that they should desist of building on waterways and waterways, which is very important. We have to be careful. We have to ensure that all environmental standards are adhered to.
Governor Zulum further revealed plan to review the Maiduguri master plan as part of efforts to address perennial flooding challenges.
With the ongoing rehabilitation work and controlled release of water, the authorities say there is no cause for alarm. From Alau Dam site of the ongoing rehabilitation work, Mohammed Goni, NTA News.
Nigeria's efforts at tackling maternal health is advancing as the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria incorporates a competency-based model in advanced emergency obstetrics newborn care and surgical skills into the training curriculum for resident doctors in obstetrics and gynecology. Oluseyi Adiagbo reports that this milestone was highlighted during the 2024 Global Health Workforce Program, an initiative of the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and Nigerian partners.
Maternal mortality remains a critical public health issue across many African countries, with Nigeria bearing a significant burden. Compounding the crisis is the disproportionately high rates of deaths following cesarean sections in the region. In response, the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, in partnership with the Wellbeing Foundation Africa and the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria, is implementing a major initiative to strengthen the capacity of healthcare workers. The project has trained more than 260 doctors, many of whom are already reporting improved outcomes in managing surgical emergencies.
This particular joint venture has impacted knowledge and skills that in different hospitals in Nigeria, they've acquired skills to save lives.
They were able to procure those mannequins that for the training, and we know they are quite expensive.
It is now mandatory for residents to go through this training in preparation for the exams.
The impact has really been huge. 2 centers of excellence in 2 places, Lagos University Teaching Hospital in the south and Federal Medical Center, Abuja in the north. Subsequently, what we're going to do is to try to look for funding so that we can set similar centers in each geopolitical zone in Nigeria.
And this is really the time to sit down together, find the investors, mobilize local investments to make sure that every single medical worker that comes into contact with pregnant women, a newborn in Nigeria, has received these trainings.
Stakeholders were unanimous of continued investments to sustain the program. In Abuja, Oluseyi Adiagbo, NTA News.
And still talking health, the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives National Executive Council has resolved to suspend its 7 days warning strike after an extensive review of the Memorandum of Understanding and the agreed time-bound implementation framework. President of the body, Haruna Mamman, says NEC acknowledges the positive steps taken by the federal government in responding to the 9 core demands of the association, particularly the commitment to clear timelines for implementation and in view of the formal agreement reached in line with the principle of dialogue and good faith. NEC hereby suspends the ongoing nationwide strike action with immediate effect.
The federal government has committed to a time-bound implementation of all 9 key demands presented by the association. In view of this development, NEC has directed the immediate suspension of the strike action in line with the principles of dialogue and good faith. NAM expressed appreciation to its members nationwide for their unity, patience, and resilience. The association remains committed to dialogue and continue to champion the rights and welfare of Nigerian nurses and midwives.
That NEC has directed the national leadership to track the government's compliance with the agreed timelines, while state councils are directed to mobilize members for the immediate resumption of duty. And no member of the association, including interns and locum nurses, should be victimized for participating in the nationwide strike. All right, it's time for a break. And when we come back, we'll begin our conversation on safe passage. How do we secure Nigeria's inland waterways? Do stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us. Waterways remain one of the most cost-effective transportation systems. Despite being considered safer than road transportation, frequent boat accidents have resulted in significant loss of lives and continues to pose a serious challenge to the marine transportation sector. Now, in this report, Usman Zubairu examines the state of inland water transport and safety measures in place to mitigate the risk of accidents.
Enforcement of compulsory use of safety jackets addressing overloading, and increased security surveillance patrol on the waterways have gone a long way to reduce casualty.
The marine boat management has really and tremendously improved on the security measures on the waterways.
Good ferries are necessary. We have good boats. You know, before we had this MV Cumo and all that. Those are the kind of things they should bring back for us to help us to travel.
Local boat operators in River State are largely unaware of NIMET predictions on weather conditions.
We can drive under the rain as far as it does not lead to storm. We'll drive, but if it leads to storm, we'll look for the nearest creek and wait. When the storm is over, we'll continue.
Higher Prezi from Yenegua reports that from January this year till date, there has been only one reported case of boat mishap at Acadia Waterway in Bayelsa State that unfortunately claimed the life of a woman and a little daughter. The donation of a large quantity of safety vests by the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy and rescue measures by boat operators have helped reduce incidents of boat mishap in the state. With the rains getting more frequent, stakeholders are urging the government to deploy covered ferry boats to serve and increase comfort of passengers in Rivers and Bayelsa State. In Port Harcourt, Robinson Daratede, NTA News.
Apologies for the mix-up there. That was from Port Harcourt. Of course, you know it's a riverine site, so obviously the boat mishaps we want to talk about happens there often. But we'll definitely bring you the other reports. But in the meantime, let's welcome our guests. Mr. Mani Ochugboju. He's a transportation consultant and a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Ochugboju.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes.
Our pleasure. Let me take your mind back to a few days ago, the recent boat accident we saw happen in Niger State, Shiroro local government to be precise. We heard from reports that 9 passengers were on board, and this is not the first time we're seeing, despite efforts to mitigate these mishaps. What really is the problem?
The problems are many. The problems of boat mishaps are actually avoidable and preventable. That's the saddest part of the problem we have. And to a large extent, it commences with the fact that the boats we are using are totally improper or inappropriate. The boat operators need to upgrade their standards. What they are presenting to us today in the 21st century is outrageous. They are using canoes, whatever you want to call it. Look at the image on your screen. That is outrageous. What we need is a standard ferry where you can sit down, you can wear your safety vest, and there's a space between you and the next person. There's no overloading. That's the first thing. The investment in the ferries are insufficient, they are inadequate, they are outdated. When we deal with that, a large part of the problems that have been recurrent in the last 10 years will be dealt with. So we first have to take a critical look at the boat operators. What we are using is not right, it's not safe, it is archaic and backward. Let's deal with that first. The second thing we need to deal with is implementation of the rules and the regulations. Thankfully, we now have a template that is to standardize the operations of ferries and boats, jetties, the licensing, and even the sanctions where there are violations of some rules.
You're talking about the Waterway Transportation Code.
Precisely. Thank you very much. Now, that code in itself is a template as to what is to be done. And it is brilliant. We thank the present regime that have pushed the gazetting of that code. Now, with the gazetting of that code, we have 3 things to look out for. Number 1, implementation. We say that every day in Nigeria. As a lawyer, it's something I encounter every day. more so as regulations are required. Dealing with regulations in Nigeria, the first thing you look out for is implementation. How is it being implemented? The second thing you look out for is even compliance. Who is complying with it?
Okay.
Are they complying with it properly?
Mr. Ochugboju, it's good you mentioned the challenge of implementation, which we see cut across different aspects, not just for this issue we're talking about.
That's right.
But if part of the problem you mentioned was the kind of crafts we're seeing in the waterways, they're supposed to be registered. But we see unregistered crafts, apply. Right. So if there is a court now, and we have, what do they call them? Water marshals manned at these jetties and boarding points. What is really happening? Why are we not having this compliance that you mentioned?
I think the issue of lax compliance also has to do with implementation. You have marshals. I was doing some consultancy work in Lagos recently, and I traveled in and around Lagos waterways. There were marshals there. You see where life vests were given to passengers in Lagos. And our cool Lagosians were not wearing it. They were holding it. The guys in Lagos, the ladies in Lagos, they were holding their vest. I was just looking at them. I wore mine on top of my suit, and they were like as if I came from some out of space. They were wondering why I should be doing that. Now, that marshal looking at us, he didn't even bother telling them to put on their vests. That's an example. So the marshal needs retraining. I use the word retraining because obviously he's trained, but he has to be retrained in the professional way of approaching the implementation of his work and supervising the passengers in the boats and talking to the boat operators, how you approach it. That's one example right there. Another example is a situation where there's a time bound as to when you travel these days within the waterways. You are supposed to travel between the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But you see people traveling late in the evening, sometimes at night, with poor visibility, sometimes with almost zero visibility. Now, how do you expect to sail safely in such circumstances? Another problem we have with implementation is the fact that there are insufficient ferries, standard ferries, insufficient investment, let me put it that way. This is where the private sectors need to come in. And also too, state governments need to come in too. I use the word state government in particular because I don't agree with that notion that the state or the government have no business being in business. They have a business being in business, for goodness sake. And we have state transportations or state road transports. You have Niger State buses, Benue Link, Cross River Line, Lagos Line, and all this. Why can't you have ferries that are decent?
It even opens economic viability for
Precisely. Even states now are even having aviation or airlines. If states are having airlines, Enugu State is having airline, Akwa Ibom is having airline, why can't you have standard safe ferries? We should have ferries that are so presentable and nice that even the governor of a state and his commissioners can travel in it. We lived abroad. Nigerians are everywhere abroad. We see standard ferries abroad. Presidents travel by ferries abroad. Government officials travel by ferries abroad. Using your SUV every day is not a sign of service delivery. Why can't you use your ferries, for example? And besides, we have 3,000 kilometers of navigable roads in waterways in Nigeria. 3,000. That's about the same number of mileage we have for railway. So our waterways are very important.
And yet on tap.
Besides, they're even 10,000 anyway. I'm just saying the navigable ones that are navigable all year round.
Okay, Mr. Ochugboju, if I'll come in there, from what you're saying, even yet untapped, because there's a lot of potential there.
Precisely.
You know, when you mentioned the nonchalant attitude of passengers, the recent report from this Shiroro boat accident by the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau confirmed 7 passengers who wore their jackets, their life jacket, are the only ones who, you know, were not harmed.
Thank you
very
much.
So let's begin to talk sensitization. We saw the report where the boat operator said, even under the rain, we can drive. It doesn't matter. There's this negligence for life.
Thank you very much. Talking about sensitization, I will applaud NIWA, Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority. I think they have upped their game as regards sensitization.
Yeah.
And in a sense, we thank NTA for a program like this because it is life-saving, it enhances the consciousness of our people as regards waterway safety, it increases safety, and even confidence in investment in waterways, because you talked about the fact that the potentials are untapped. The sensitization campaign have started. A large wave of sensitization consciousness is arising, but we need to maintain it. The problem with sensitization campaign is that you have a good outing in January. You lay back on your oars. That's not good enough. You need to keep up the ante, maintain it, and raise it every month, every week, through the various outlets. Yes, reaching the communities is great. Reaching the local governments is great. Bringing the governors and their commissioners into this sensitization campaign is great. I'm aware of the consultation meeting that took place at I think, Wells Carlton in Asokoro, I think sometimes in either October or thereabout. That was well attended, and the outcome is great, in the sense that commissioners from across the country, including Federal Capital Territory, were involved there. Because most of these commissioners, they attach transportation as an auxiliary part of their ministry. You see how works and transport. So they tend to deal with works and neglect transport, unfortunately. So it is now time for them to see that when people die in Niger State, when people die in Kwara State, when people die in Makurdi in Benue State, or in Bayelsa, in Port Harcourt, in Rivers, or Akwa Ibom, it is their indigenes that are dying. They are not indigenes of NIWA. NIWA may be in Abuja with offices round the country. But the indigenes that are first victims of mismanagement of our waterways, our brothers and sisters, our kith and kins, our citizens.
Mr. Ochugboju, let's pause to ponder some thoughts. We'll take a break. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us. So you recall earlier at the start of the conversation, I called a report by Usman Zubairu on the state of our waterways and what the government is doing. So let's have the report right now.
Nigeria has about 10,000 kilometers of waterways, which can provide all year-round navigation for transportation of bulk cargoes of passengers. These waterways provide a vital link to 5 neighboring countries and offer access to 28 out of the country's 36 states. However, boat mishaps have become a regular occurrence in many rural communities. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency had issued several warnings highlighting heavy downfall. However, investigation revealed that boat operators are not conversant with changing weather conditions, which pose significant challenge to maritime operations. These factors underscore the urgent need for comprehensive reforms to restore safety and public trust in waterways transportation.
We have deployed about almost 800 water marshals to take charge and to monitor these boat users and boat operators. And apart from that, the federal government is deploying aluminium boats and iron boats in the next 3, 4, 5 months.
Despite Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority regulations stipulating a 7-year prison term for offenders, the problem persists. Osman's NTA News.
All right, Mr. Ochigboju, you just saw that report. And earlier when we're having this conversation, I'm glad that the weather prediction thing by NAMIT was still mentioned, which, of course, this boat operators just throw to the wind. NIWA must be commended for the sensitization, like you said. Yeah. But how can they carry these boat operators along to comply with these weather predictions? Because lives are at stake. What measures can they take?
Listen to the report. You can hear the MD of NIWA saying that about 800 marshals have been deployed. That is going to be very helpful. The marshals need to be increased. I say so because I was a road marshal myself over 30 years ago. We started the Federal Road Safety Commission as part of the road marshals when it started in 1988-89. Now, that number is not good enough. And I recall in our days as marshals, what we were doing then was patrol. You also need to patrol and enforce the rules. So we need to have more vessels patrolling the highway to enforce the rules. And the patrol, I understand there is a provision for surveillance for 24 hours. If that is so, that is perfect. But it should not be just a mere policy proposal. It should be something that is actual, definite, purposive, and effective. There has to be effective implementation. If that is done, then follow it up. At the various jetties like this, that's a jetty there. At the various jetties, just as we join a plane, when you sit in a plane, even if you travel 200 times, you see the very kind air hostess coming to tell you, wear your seatbelt, this is what you do.
And you get tired of hearing that sometimes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
We should be doing the same thing with our ferries. What we see there in those, our pictures there, they are not fit for human transportation. And I have to say it loud so that our enforcement authorities hear it, with due respect. I know we look at the issues of development, inadequate infrastructure, but those things there, they should be prohibited. They should be banned. That is canoe. That's the kind of rickety wooden canoes that we used in our great-grandfathers' eras in the 50s and in the 30s. And we are still using it today. What for? Are we not going to advance beyond that? That thing must be banned.
Which is where investment comes in.
Precisely. And I keep saying government must also invest.
What about the private sector you mentioned earlier?
The private sector, we don't need to wait for them. For goodness sake, they are so laid back in Africa. Yes, I'm sorry to say. So government should be proactive. Most of what we have in Africa today, were they not government enterprises? And then they got privatized to our laid-back investors. And then some foreigners who come like vultures to come and pick the ripe ones and invest on it. We don't have to wait for no foreigner. We don't have to wait for no private sector. The various states, we have 28 states that are connected to the rivers and waters, including Borno State that has Lake Chad and the waterways. Incidentally, Borno too have incidents of accidents too. Very high incidents, besides Zamfara and Niger State and Kwara and Benue and Bayelsa and Rivers. Even Borno State too is involved. Ban this thing you see on your screen. I will keep repeating it. You must ban it. You must ban it. It's unsafe.
Okay, Mr. Ochigboju, I'm sure the message have gotten to the right authorities, but let's look at way forward. Individual, sensitization also, telling yourself some hard truth of your safety first by wearing the life jackets. Because yes, you can take a horse to a river, but you can't force it to drink water. The marshals will do their job, but when people are adamant, it becomes a problem. What's your message?
The message is to continue what NTA is doing, what NIWA is doing, and what other government agencies and news outlets are doing, and what some volunteers are doing. I've seen some volunteers that are carrying out sensitization work. That must be drummed in. Entering those canoes is a suicide mission, period. The kind of ferries we must have are such that a governor of a state and a commissioner of a state can travel in it just as he travels in his SUV. If it is not good enough for him, then it is not good enough for us. It's as simple as that. That's the standard. If you go to small European countries, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, tiny little European countries that are not up to Nigeria, not up to Benue State where I come from, you don't travel in those kind of rickety canoes. You don't. Those are what, they just keep it like a kind of fun thing. When they want to play, you know, they have canoe clubs, kayaki or whatever they call it. That's what they use it for. And they use it for sport, just to play, not for transportation, not to carry human beings, not to carry even animals. So let that message sink in.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mani Ochuboju, transportation consultant and, of course, a lawyer. Well said. I'm sure the right thing will be done going forward. Let's take a break. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us. The actualization of the Out-of-School Children program by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's Renewed Hope initiative is a task that must be embraced and supported by all Nigerians. This was the consensus at the town hall meeting of the National Commission for Al-Majiri and Out-of-School Children's Education Advocacy Engagement in Mushin. Bolaji Akim reports.
Statistics by the United Nations Children's Education Fund, UNICEF, has put the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria between ages of 5 and 14 at 10.4 million, while Lagos, despite its high literacy level, accounts for over 2 million of this number. Alarmed by this figure, the National Commission for Al-Majiri and Out-of-School Children's Education, which is an integral part of Renewed Hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is determined to ensure that no Nigerian child is left roaming the streets. The Commission, through its advocacy team, is putting a square peg in a square hole in finding a lasting solution to a series of barriers working against enrollment of Nigerian child for basic education.
If for whatever reason a child is not in school, the team, the volunteers, and any well-meaningful person that will identify the child, all they need to do is communicate with the government, and the government will actually provide.
It helps them become more enlightened citizens of the society, and we're also furnishing them with skills that they can help to be self-sustained and self-reliant.
We want to include every child, whether they are Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, no matter their skin color, every child deserves access to education.
The advocacy team is to move from word to word in the local government towards the realization of the Commission's goals. Stakeholders at the town hall engagement expressed determination to take the campaign of No Child Left Behind to the grassroots. In Lagos, Bolaji Akim, NTA News.
All right, it's time for sports, and our sportsman Ayo Deji Makinde is set. Ayo?
Oh yes, Ruth, I bet we should begin with good news. No otherwise today, actually. Just like last week when the Super Falcons were playing. But today is the turn of the Tigress. And they are just 1 inch closer to the trophy because Nigeria is through to the final of FIBA Women's Afro-Basket after a 75-68 points victory over West African rivals Senegal at Palais des Sports de Trecqueville in Abidjan. China-based shooting guard Eze Nekalu led the way with 19 points as Nigeria rallied back from a disappointing third quarter with an impressive 22-17, 21-20, 9-21 and 23-10 points victory. Next, for the defending champions is a final showdown with the winner between South Sudan and Mali. I will be in the final on Sunday evening. So let's keep fingers crossed. Let's leave basketball and go to football, where ahead of the African Nations Championship CHAN opener in East Africa, Super Eagles coach Eric Shell has defended his final 23-man squad amid debates. Shell states that his selection is based on his philosophy and determination of players to deliver. Nigeria will face defending champion Senegal in their opening group game on Sunday in a tournament slated for Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania. Let's leave football and go back to North Africa, where Team Nigeria continued impressive showing at the inaugural African School Games in Algeria, as Godwin Osarete Grace clinched gold in the women's cycling road race event, marking another milestone for the country in the continental competition. With a blistering time of 1 minute 37.02 seconds, Grace edged out Algeria's home favourite, Shimoni Susan, who finished 4 seconds behind. This victory adds to Nigeria's growing medal haul and underscores the strength and determination of the nation's young athletes competing on African soil. And that's your sports. It's back to Ruth. Good news. Of course, the Tigress will be playing in the final on Sunday.
You know, Ayo, I'm smiling. Sisterhood making us proud.
Oh,
and guess
yes.
what? Tomorrow, August 3rd, is actually a special day for the ladies. You want to find out? It's National Sisters Day. Well, your sister is your mirror. You know that, right? Shining back at you with a world of possibilities. She is your witness who sees you at your worst and best and loves you anyway. She is your partner in all circumstances, your midnight companion, someone who knows when you are smiling, even in the dark. She is your teacher, defense attorney and personal press agent. Now, you know what that means. While sisters don't always agree, they always have each other's back, and they will always be there for one another. Now, if you don't have a sister in your life biologically, you may have someone who has become a sister to you. And so tomorrow is that perfect day to pay tribute to that. And if you don't, I'm offering myself to be your sister. On that note, we round off Weekend File edition for today. Thank you for being part of it. I'm Ruth Aguele. Good night.